would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to it, folks. I hope your week is starting off well. It was a very interesting weekend for me. We'll get into that in a second. For those of you who'd like to get in contact with me, the best way to do that is through the website at therebelbroker.com. Once you get there, you can click on Contact in the menu bar and send along any ideas, suggestions, whatever might be bouncing around in your head. Please send them my way. While you're there, please also take a minute to take the quick demographic survey. Just click the red button at the top of the page titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. Use the same email address both times you're asked, answer a handful of demographic style questions, and you're done. And you've done two things. You've managed to help the site out. One of my main goals is to get the show growing so that I can spend more time on creating content both here within the podcast, diversify things there a little bit, but then also create other things outside of the show, exclusive materials for download, video for YouTube, all kinds of different things, different ways for you to get information in a more interesting way. So you're helping me. But in addition, I reward those who take the time out by putting them into a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. We do that once a month. We just did another drawing this last weekend, and I've reached out to that person who won, and we'll see if that person replies. They haven't yet, but if they don't, I do just go down the list one more and find someone else. So we've had a winner every month for quite a while now. I think we're up to $500, $550 so far that's been given out. So congratulations to those who've won, and good luck to those of you who are still waiting for your turn to win. Okay. We've got a variety of interesting stories today. I wanted to kind of start off with just one from my own practical experience that kind of threw me for a loop. This last weekend was pretty busy. I have a lot of folks looking for properties, and a lot of the information I share here sort of comes from that. It comes from that exposure, and every once in a while, a bizarre experience will come along that I think is worth sharing. And I'm still wondering if I was being punked or not. Everything's moving along as it should otherwise. But I got a person reaching out to me over the weekend who was a buyer, was a single guy. And I was trying to set what he was looking for, right? So there's always the basics. Whenever we're having that first conversation, you want to make sure that the person is pre-approved so we know exactly how much we actually can spend on a property. You want to know what the minimum is for bedrooms and baths, for square footage. How big of a yard do you want? Do you want a single-family residential home only, or are you interested in townhomes and condos as well? What areas? So all the usual list of things. And then usually I'll ask other questions like, what are things you enjoy doing, right? Do you have a dog? Those types of things, because particularly in the community I serve, there are areas that are aimed more at the lifestyle choices that you make. So if you're a big runner, there's some great trails, particularly if you're a trail runner. If you're a biker, there's some great trails for that. And there's and obviously you can drive to these things, but wouldn't it be nice to be able to just walk out your front door and walk to it? So, and if you're a big pet person, if you have a dog that you love spending time with, there's an end of town I'd put you in simply because there's a dog park right there. So you get where I'm going. You try to find out what else is interesting or interests them so that you at least keep that in your mind, right? You don't exclude other homes that might not have that, but you really emphasize the properties that are going to satisfy more than just the need for a roof over their head. And I started asking these kinds of questions. I've had a lot of people ask very interesting sort of culture of the neighborhood kind of questions, like, is there a community that tends to be a little bit more welcoming to members of the gay community? Are there areas of town that tend to be I don't know, more faith-based? Is there a place where certain folks live in for certain things? And of course, those are the types of things I don't search. You can't really search by that. You kind of have to get a feeling for yourself. But nobody is steering anybody towards anything. But the thing is people will ask these questions, right? And I've had some that were shocking to me in terms of just the sort of the racist assumptions. And remember, I've been at this since the late 80s. Now, the number of times I've had this happen is extremely low. And I've had a lot of different interesting responses to my questions about what kind of neighborhood they want to live in. But the answer to the question I got this last weekend was one of the first times I had no idea what the person was talking about. This gentleman asked me if I knew of a MGTOW friendly neighborhood or development. This was someone who was actually looking for preferred a condo, would take anything, but actually preferred the idea of a condo just because they don't want to worry about mowing lawns. They don't want to worry about upkeep or anything. They just want to worry about what's inside their home. And I'm like, I'll be honest, I am not a young guy, but I have never heard of MGTOW. No idea what it was. And I told him, I don't know what that is. What is that? And he told me it stands for men going their own way. And I thought, okay, great. Not real. So I guess, and I responded with, so are you talking about like a community where there's more single guys kind of a thing? He goes, I suppose that might be a part of it, but it's actually a philosophy that's different where you're actually actively not pursuing women. And, so there you go. I don't really know where else to go with it. I actually said, well, you know what? I'll ask if there are things where an area where that's a thing. But there's really no way to filter by that, obviously, right? I mean, you're going to have to go property by property and figure out if that's a thing or not. But apparently that's a thing. And not only is it a thing, but you can go to meetup.com and you can find MGTOW meetups, which was interesting. Unfortunately, there weren't any of those types of things in our area, but I told them, hey, feel free to start up your own and make it happen. So that didn't really help us a lot in finding him places to search. But there you go. I learned a new term over the weekend, and I'm not really sure what to do with that information. So I thought I'd throw that out there. I'm really not sure what to do with it. Somewhere in the back of my head, I wanted to make like a really good joke about it, but I'm still just not 100% sure what the heck that looks like in a life, right? Where you actively decide to avoid an entire gender. So more power to you. Your life choices are your own. I'm just not equipped to fully grok that. Okay. And just so you know, it's out there as an option. It's always nice to know that you have choices. One other thing to hit today, there's a bunch of things to hit today. As you know, one of the things that we've been talking about on this show is the debt profile. Now, the reason we keep hitting the debt profile is because I think that's the thing, right? When you try to figure out what's the one thing to keep an eye on to give us clues into what's happening with the economy, from what direction are downturns in the real estate market going to come from? And I think, as it was last time, ultimately it was about the debt portfolio, right? The amount of debt you had versus the actual things that secured that debt and how that all stood up to you, for you. And by understanding, I think, how many threats there are sort of sprinkled around in that part of every person's life, you get an ability to better anticipate potential problems and to react. And I guess right now my search is for that thing, the flashpoint that tells us you might, if you haven't decided on a path yet, you might want to pick something. Now, as I've mentioned before, my path has pretty much been picked. I'm running behind on my decision, but not so much so that I'm horribly concerned. My goal is to pretty much get my situation with the sale of my property wrapped up by October. I think we're likely to see the beginning of the downturn in October. And that's not to say that I think you need to take your action before October. I actually think, as other listeners have mentioned in messages to me, and also some folks who consume the show via YouTube have commented on some videos, I actually think that'll just be the first thing. I don't think we're going to see a catastrophic moment. It's not going to be a Monday where everything's fine and something goes wrong, and then Tuesday everything takes a huge dump. I think it's going to be relatively gradual. And I also think there will be the same amount, if not more, denial of bad things happening as happened last time. If you think back, once things started getting really bad, we still had members of Congress talking about everything's fine, everything's good, don't worry. I still see no signs of a severe problem, right? We all the experts were saying these kinds of things, or at least a huge number of them. So I think there will be a period of time where you could act, but it's going to be a period of time that probably comes a little bit before where you get the blanket denials. But it's going to take an important element on your part, and that is to see things as they are. Don't let wishful thinking play in. Make decisions based on as many facts as you can get your hands on. And hopefully that's one of the things we're providing here, is that I'm covering enough of this and sharing enough of it that you get just data that you can use to make a better decision. Now, one of the things we've talked about is keeping an eye on auto loans, simply because that's one of the weakest areas right now. We already talked about how the securitized auto loans, and yes, securitization may sound familiar. That was one of the bad things that happened with home loans, with mortgages last time. And it still happens, right? You get things bundled together or securitized so that they can then be invested in the stock market. And we already talked about how the 2015 auto loans saw this really ridiculous rate of default. And the projection was, if that continued, this could be a major threat to that debt portfolio we talked about. When things start to go really bad, how do people react? And the argument I'm making is that they'll react the same way they've proven they react in the past when they are challenged in their debt, right? Okay. Now, one other reason why this is important is because remember that this becomes an investment vehicle in the stock market. And when these start to go down, you could see that negatively affecting the stock market, which would negatively affect pensions. And we've already talked about the trouble that pensions are in. So the one reason why this whole debt thing is so important, particularly as it relates to this, is because of that potential for it to be the first step in building up to worse things. Let's see. We talked about this back in May. The problems at Santander, Consumer USA Holdings Incorporated, which is one of the biggest subprime auto finance companies. They verified income on just 8% of borrowers whose loans it recently bundled into bonds, according to Moody's Investor Service. The low level of due diligence on applicants compares with 64% of loans in a recent securitization sold by General Motors financial company's AmeriCredit Union. The lack of checks may be one factor in explaining higher loan losses experienced by Santander Consumer in bond deals that it has sold in recent years. Moody's analysts Jody Shen and Nick Monzillo wrote in a May 17 report, which reviewed data required of asset-backed bond issuers that's recently been made available. Investors seem to be ignoring the underlying risks, according to Peter Kaplan, who's the fund manager at Merganser Capital Management. Just like with subprime mortgage bubbles, we suspect the extra 50 basis points of yield garnered from moving down the credit quality curve will ultimately prove to be slightly less than sufficient compensation. Luckily, much of the losses will reside with America's already bankrupt pension funds, which means that taxpayer will get the opportunity to step in and fix everything. And this is according to the folks at Zero Hedge. Now, of course, Zero Hedge often will go off and interpret things in the worst way possible, but they are, in fact, dealing with just straight data here. This is not data that tells us things are going to be going well. This tells us things are going to go bad, and they're going bad for a while. That there was this mentality that pushed subprime lending. And we talked about this at the time. We talked about this back in 2013, 2014, of subprime loans that were being pushed out in the auto industry. And it's absolutely one of those things that could feed into this. So this is another little element that I think is worth looking at and understanding. Now, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, but when we come back, we are going to spend a little bit of time talking about the most and least expensive college towns in 2017. Now, there's some interesting points to be made here. I think that if you're an investor who's looking for that rental property that's that's likely to have good performance over time and a relative amount of stability, having a college town be your first step is a good one. Now, I like to go for stuff a little bit more diverse. If the only thing happening there is a college or university, I usually like to have a few different things going on, and then pick a property that would serve both the college community and whatever else is going on in that community so that I could go back and forth depending on how I want to manage things. But these are great places for folks to jump in. So we're going to take a quick break here for a minute. But when we come back, we're going to go down our list and talk about some of these communities that could be a fantastic investment for you if getting a college town style rental going is on your checklist. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to talk about some of the most and least expensive college towns. One, obviously, as a warning, perhaps, unless you are in a position where purchasing these would make sense. Now, I do the math on them, but typically, if you're someone who wants to get into this and wants to do it at a price point that isn't going to break the bank, but give you a really good, focused, niche rental market to go for, I think college towns are a great way to go. I've had clients who started off their business by doing that, by purchasing a property for a son or a daughter who really, right near college, right, so that they could take the benefits from that, and actually end up paying for it. I had a client who 4 years ago, had a daughter who was going to go to Santa Clara University, and she had a couple of friends who were going to go to San Jose State University, and the distance between those two schools is not that great, and bought a property just a little bit closer to Santa Clara University, but it was a 4-bedroom, ended up renting out the other 3 bedrooms to 3 other girls who were going to college, and it more than paid for the mortgage and ended up equaling free living for their daughter. So it worked out super well for them. I've been considering the same thing, depending on where my kids end up going. And it's something that's a possibility for my son who's going to be starting college this year, but we will see. I'm going to be taking him up there at the end of August. And so for his first year, he wants to do student housing. But that second year, it'll be wide open for other options. So I'm toying with what my options will be there. So if that's your first step into it, it could be a great way to introduce yourself to the process of being a landlord. Now, what's interesting about these is they approached it from the standpoint of college towns with most affordable housing, but then they also ranked it on a homeowner-centric grading curve, factoring in median home prices to find the 10 college towns with the least expensive homes. The college towns selected must have 20% of the population enrolled in an institute of higher education, as well as at least 2,000 students living in the town. And it also limited rankings to 2 cities per state to offer geographic diversity. So we're going to go ahead and cover the top 5, and then we'll go ahead and run down the worst 5 as well, and just to sort of calibrate you. And here's something to think about. If you are someone who's already done this and you already own in some of these communities, this may be an opportunity for you to look back and decide whether or not it's time for you to sell and move your cash into another marketplace. If you own a property you've owned forever in some area that ends up on our worst list, the only reason our worst list is the worst is primarily because of the cost involved in purchasing. So if you've got a deal like that, great. But if you do feel like you're at a peak in that market, it may be something you want to change in terms of selling and then buying in another market that might give you a higher percentage return. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with number 5 on the great list, the communities you want to invest in. Number 5 is Alfred, New York, where the median home price is $89,000 with a student population of 90.3%. And according to this article from Realtor.com, Alfred, New York is in Allegheny County. It's in the far western part of the state, and students here make up more than 90% of the population. 3 institutions of higher learning are located in this town: Alfred State College, Alfred University, and the New York State College of Ceramics at Alfred University. Residents interested in continuing their education might want to look at Alfred State, officially known as SUNY College of Technology at Alfred. Tuition is $6,470. That's really not terribly important to you. But what's interesting is that this is clearly a town where it is dominated by students. And the downside is mobility is a double-edged sword for most landlords. It can be great to get somebody in there, particularly when timing is right. And there's a season for folks to be moving in and moving out that tends to go along with the school year calendar. But because of just the volume of students involved, you're likely in a position to be able to be guaranteed of getting folks in there. You can sometimes find that things won't be as in demand during those summer months when folks aren't in class. But, I've actually had quite a few folks who've invested in properties like this, and they end up being rented all year round. Usually their leases are a year to 2 years, where folks don't end up moving out during those summer months. So you can absolutely get yourself 100% rented with very little vacancy rate. But if you do, I think what's attractive about a marketplace like this is you have such a ready, willing, and able set of renters that you're likely going to be able to get that thing filled pretty quickly. Number 4 on our list is Pittsburg, Kansas. Median home price, $84,500. Now note, that's the second property so far that's under $100,000 in terms of barriers to entry. In fact, all of the locations on our list are going to be below that $100,000 mark. So it makes being able to get into one of these properties very, very easy. And as I mentioned, number 4 on our list is Pittsburg, Kansas at $84,500 with 26.5% of the city being students. Pittsburg State University is the major institution of higher learning there with about 7,500 students. The school is home to the $30 million Kansas Technology Center, touted as one of the most prestigious tech schools in the nation, and partners with local businesses to create a pipeline of skilled future employees. So one other thing to consider is what is being taught at these universities. What are these universities well known for? If it's a magnet school for different careers that are very much in demand, that's obviously going to feed your ability to get those properties rented. So keep that in mind as you're looking around. Number 3 on our list, Charleston, Illinois. Median home price, $82,500. Student population, 38.5%. Charleston is located about an hour outside of fellow university town Champaign, Illinois, and 2 hours from Indianapolis. This small town, home of Eastern Illinois University, has long worn its college pride on its sleeve. Their long sleeves. The school was originally established as a teacher's college back in 1895. The real estate market is a bit lower key and reflects the town's small population of just more than 21,000. That means there are usually only about 150 homes on the market at any given time. However, there's a good variety among the mostly single-family homes available, ranging from a $7,900 4-bedroom house that needs some updating to a $749,000 4-bedroom abode on the Charleston County Golf Course. Number 2 on our list is Muncie, Indiana. Median. This has been on our list before. Muncie has been on our list for something else before. I wish I could remember what it is. Median home price, $74,900. Student population, 25.6. It's the home of Ball State University. It's also a regional health center thanks to Indiana University Health Ball Memorial Hospital. The university has had a substantial green influence in the community starting in the mid-2000s. All building projects here were required to be leadership in energy and environmental design certified. To enjoy all that extra fresh air, residents can explore the Cardinal Greenway, a 62-mile train on an abandoned railway corridor. There's also the Minnetrista, a nature, history, and arts museum, and the Muncie Children's Museum. Buyers can nab single-family houses for less than $10,000, according to this. But be warned, these houses need some serious TLC. maybe some home buyers can take a continuing education class in carpentry. And things like that are interesting to note as well, simply because for those of you who enjoy the flip or the sort of not so much a flip, but buy, improve, hold, then sell. I know a lot of folks who like to try to draw some profit out of it, and then after they've remodeled, be able to get that thing sold. That would be a nice blended strategy, right? Where you want to do a little bit of holding, but you also want to just build equity in the property through a rehab. And if you're someone who has experience with that, this could be a great source of properties to get that done. Number 1 on our list, California, Pennsylvania. Median home price $73,500 with a 39.9% student population. Let's see. People who live and work in this picturesque place about an hour outside Pittsburgh, or who attend the 165-year-old California University of Pennsylvania, are well versed in its charms. Quote, California is your typical all-American small town, says local realtor William Brawler. He notes that most of the jobs in the area are associated with the school, but there are a variety of other employers nearby, including a steel mill. For those seeking a bit of R&R, there's the Monongahela River. Monongahela, with plenty of boating and jet skiing. Yearning for a less wholesome rush, check out the 3 casinos in the vicinity. So they give you a little bit of a rundown on some other things going on in the area. I'm not a big fan of, and I could be wrong with this. We had a chat with, was it Marcus on Friday that was talking, or no, but an interview you're going to get this Friday. It's one I did Friday, but it gets posted this coming Friday, where he talks about investment opportunities in Las Vegas. And, my understanding with some investors I've talked to is that Las Vegas is tough when you're trying to rent like a condo or something like that, unless you have a very specific appeal that you're drawing folks in, just because hotel rooms tend to be so cheap and you can be right there at the casino. So Las Vegas is a little bit more hit or miss for me on that. I'd love to hear from folks who actively invest in Las Vegas to find out what your thoughts are on that, because it definitely sounds like the investor we're going to be hearing from on Friday is moving in a direction where they are catering to folks who would normally be drawn into the hotel business end of things, but I think providing more of a luxury accommodation kind of a situation. So I'm sure that has its own special niche that will be satisfied. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum and talk about the 5 most expensive communities. It's interesting because these are all going to sound relatively familiar because they are in areas that we have already talked about as not great investments. Princeton, New Jersey is at number 5. Median home price $744,000. Student population 27%. 98% of Princeton University students live on campus in dorms. But if you think that leaves plenty more housing in this Ivy League town for everyone else, well, it's good enough if you can afford it. Homeowners here seem particularly ambitious when attempting to sell their homes. The median listing price is about $744,000. However, the median closing price is just about $583,000, according to Realtor.com. So savvy negotiation skills may really pay off for the buyer. And that's exactly the kind of discrepancy I love to see, or at least know about, when I'm searching in different markets, and should absolutely, if you start a relationship with a real estate professional in an area you want to invest, that's the kind of number you want to see. What's the difference between list prices and asking price and sales prices? And also get into the nitty gritty of some specific ones, particularly if they're properties in the areas you're interested in investing. So it may be too late for you to go in and get any cash flow going on in Princeton, but it definitely makes the list of the 5 worst. Number 4, Boulder, Colorado, median home price $839,000, 30.1% student population. Let's see. Boulder's location at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains means the opportunities for outdoor recreation are almost unlimited. This is absolutely one of those communities where a whole lot of its appeal is completely independent of colleges and universities. There are tons of reasons to live in Boulder, not just the fact that there's a college or a university there. Number 3, Cambridge, Massachusetts. I would have been stunned if this didn't make the worst list. $924,500 is the median home price with a 28.6% student population. Cambridge has been a college town since 1636. If you purchased a property back then, Congratulations. I think you're probably way into positive cash flow. Those who can't afford a nearly $1 million house consider purchasing a condo. 1 bedroom, 1 bath start at about $425,000. And again, do the math. So many investors seem to get sucked into these places, the big names, the Ivy League, those types of things, where if you really do your math and figure out what the return on investment is, it just doesn't make sense. Some of these places that feel like no-name cities or places you've really never heard of are oftentimes going to represent the greatest opportunity for you. All right, number 2, Santa Cruz, California. I actually lived very near Santa Cruz in a little town called Aptos, just south of Santa Cruz. Median home price, $985,000. Student population, 31.7%. Santa Cruz is a quintessential Northern California beach town. They've got the boardwalk, old-timey amusement parks. College students, too, lots of them, 17,000 enrolled in the University of California at Santa Cruz, a school my oldest got accepted to but declined, and a school that my niece actually is attending right now. Is it a great college town? Yeah, absolutely. It does. Do the deals that you can make there now make any sense from a standpoint of making positive cash flow in a rental? No. And again, Santa Cruz is another one of those towns where the college isn't the primary reason that I think you can make a lot of money with a rental. Also, inside of Santa Cruz County, inside of the city limits of Santa Cruz, all kinds of funky rules and limitations on you as a seller that make things tough. I know when I was still doing business over there, they started their rule about having to replace toilets with low flow. Anytime a home sold, if you had regular toilets installed in your house, you had to replace them all with low flow toilets, which really upset an awful lot of folks. And number 1 on our list, probably one you might have been able to guess, Berkeley, California. Median home price, $1 million. Student population, 30.5. Known as one of the nation's most liberal institutions of higher learning. I would say that the top 2 kind of fit that. Santa Cruz, University of Santa Cruz, and Berkeley are kissing cousins. I would say that despite Berkeley's more historical credits in this area, Santa Cruz is probably the more liberal campus just in terms of what goes on. More than 38,000 students call the crunchy college town home, although they're certainly not the ones paying the mind-bogglingly high real estate prices. The tech boom is sending real estate prices soaring all over the San Francisco Bay Area. This is actually one of those communities we've talked about before that's across the bay from San Francisco. It was sort of under that mushroom of areas that grew. One thing to the credit of this is Berkeley actually has sporting teams. Santa Cruz not only doesn't, but when they do have any sporting teams, they didn't have a football team, but they wanted to pick a mascot, and everyone wanted to sort of mock the whole process. So, everyone likes to forget this now, but they wanted to sort of thumb their nose at the whole process. So they chose the banana slug as their mascot. Now, a lot of folks like to deny that, but I had friends actually going to Santa Cruz just after they instituted the whole banana slug thing, and very clearly this was an attempt on the part of the general student body to sort of thumb their nose at the rest of college sports. So there you go. All right. What else? We had one other thing I wanted to hit in terms of data. This is a headline from the Mercury News. And I think it really continues to paint the picture. Quote, Bay Area's rocketing real estate market leads nation in over asking price sales, according to the brand new report that they're reporting on. Now, I'll include a link to these articles in the show notes for today's show, so feel free to check those out. The feeding frenzy is in full effect. I did a show about this a few days back, but a new report from Redfin shows that 73.7% of homes sold above the listing price in San Jose. That was the highest percentage in the nation, followed by the San Francisco area at 70.6% above, or 70.6 deals that closed were above asking price. Oakland next at 69.8. And Tacoma, Seattle at 62.3 and Tacoma, Washington, 52.6. So it's not just a local Bay Area thing. It's happening in other communities as well. Obviously, Seattle and Tacoma, which are, the broader metro areas, the Seattle-Tacoma area. So keep an eye on that in your local marketplace. I think that it's interesting to see how far the frenzy goes. I think for a lot of the areas where this frenzy is really happening the most, these are the areas that are likely to get hit the hardest. Why do I say that? Not because I want to be the bummer guy, but because last time that's what happened. The areas that had these greatest bidding wars, crazy frenzied buying trends were the ones that got hit the hardest. And it wouldn't, just because that's what has happened historically, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if the exact same thing happens again. All right, folks, as always, the goal is to have you walk away with way more value in your pocket than you invested in terms of time spent listening to the show. Hope we've accomplished that for you today. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to y'all next time.